The October morning in suburban Denver felt different. Not just because the autumn air carried that crisp promise of winter, but because for the first time in 18 months, I wasn't thinking about death. The oncologist's words from 3 days, ago, still echoed in my mind. Clear. Complete remission. You beat it, Michael. I sat at our kitchen table, the same one where Sarah and I had planned our future 5 years ago, where we'd celebrated my promotion at the architectural firm, where we'd cried together the night I got diagnosed. The irony wasn't lost on me that this same table would become the stage for the worst conversation of my life. Michael, we need to talk. Sarah's voice cut through my morning coffee ritual like a blade. At 30, she still looked exactly like the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. But something in her green eyes had changed. The warmth that had sustained me through chemotherapy sessions was gone, replaced by something cold and distant. Sure, babe. What's on your mind? I set down my mug, the steam rising between us like a barrier I couldn't yet see. She sat across from me, her hands folded precisely on the wooden surface. I want a divorce. The words hit me harder than any diagnosis ever had. Cancer was an enemy I could fight, could understand. This was betrayal from the person who was supposed to be my greatest ally. What? The word came out as barely a whisper. I've been thinking about this for months, Michael. I can't do this anymore. I can't be married to you anymore. My hands began to tremble, not from the lingering effects of chemo, but from pure shock. Sarah, I just beat cancer. We made it through the hardest thing imaginable. Why now? Why, when things can finally get back to normal? Her laugh was bitter, unfamiliar. Normal? Michael, there is no normal anymore. You're not the same person I married. This whole experience, it changed everything. Changed everything how? I'm still me. I'm still the same man who loves you more than anything in this world. Are you? She leaned back in her chair, creating more distance between us. Because the man I married was ambitious, driven. He had dreams. He was going places. Now you're just grateful to be alive, and I can't live my life with someone whose biggest aspiration is simply existing. The cruelty of her words knocked the breath from my lungs. During my darkest moments, the nights when nausea kept me awake, the days when I was too weak to shower. She had been my reason to fight. I had endured hell thinking about our future together, about growing old with her, about the children we'd planned to have. So you're leaving me because I survived? My voice cracked on the last word. I'm leaving you because I deserve more than a life spent taking care of someone who will always be defined by their illness. I'm in remission, Sarah. The doctors said I have an excellent prognosis. I can go back to work. We can start trying for kids. We can travel like we always talked about. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I've already talked to a lawyer, Michael. I'll be staying at my sister's place. I'll come by this weekend to get my things. As she walked toward the door, I called after her desperately. Sarah, please, don't do this. We can work through whatever you're feeling. We can go to counseling. We can... She turned back one last time, her hand on the doorknob. I already filed the papers. You'll be served soon. The front door closed with a finality that echoed through our empty house. I sat alone at our kitchen table, surrounded by the remnants of the life we'd built together. The coffee had gone cold, but I couldn't move. I couldn't process what had just happened. Outside, the Denver skyline stretched toward the Rocky Mountains, indifferent to my pain. I had fought cancer for 18 months, endured chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, and countless nights of uncertainty. I had won that battle only to lose the war for my marriage. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Jake. How are you feeling, champ? Ready to celebrate being cancer-free? I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Sarah left me. The 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, his response came. What? I'm coming over. As I waited for Jake, I walked through our house. My house now, I supposed. Every room held memories that now felt tainted. The living room where we'd watched movies during my recovery. The bedroom where she'd held me when the pain was too much to bear. The bathroom where she'd helped me when I was too weak to stand in the shower. Had it all been an act? Had she been planning this escape the entire time, waiting for me to either die or recover so she could be free of the burden I had become? The doorbell rang, and I found Jake standing on my porch with 2 six-packs of beer and a look of disbelief on his face. Michael, what the hell happened? As we sat in my living room and I recounted the morning's conversation, Jake's expression grew darker with each detail. She waited until you beat cancer to ask for a divorce? That's not just cruel. Man, that's calculated. Maybe she's right, though. Maybe I am different now. Maybe I'm not the man she married. Jake leaned forward, his voice intense. Listen to me, Michael. You faced death and won. You're stronger than you've ever been, not weaker. If she can't see that, then she doesn't deserve you. But as the afternoon wore on and the reality of my situation settled in, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Sarah's sudden departure than she had revealed. The timing, the coldness, the way she'd already consulted a lawyer, it all felt too orchestrated, too planned. Little did I know that in 3 days, a letter would arrive that would reveal the truth behind Sarah's betrayal and change everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my recovery, and the people I had trusted most. 3 days after Sarah walked out of our house, I was living like a ghost in my own home. The silence was deafening. Every corner held memories that now felt like mockeries of what I thought we had built together. I'd called in sick to work, my first week back after being cleared to return, because I couldn't concentrate on anything beyond the wreckage of my marriage. The mail slot rattled around 2 p.m. and I heard the familiar thud of letters hitting the hardwood floor of our entryway. I almost didn't check it. Bills and junk mail seemed trivial compared to the crater where my life used to be. But something made me walk to the front door. Maybe just the need to move, to do something normal in a world that had become surreal. Among the usual collection of credit card offers and utility bills was a thick envelope addressed to me in handwriting I didn't recognize. The return address was from a law firm in downtown Denver, Morrison, Klein & Associates. My heart sank. Sarah had moved faster than I expected. The divorce papers had already arrived. I carried the envelope to the kitchen, set it on the table where Sarah had destroyed my world just 3 days earlier, and stared at it for a long time. Opening it would make everything official, would start the legal machinery that would dismantle our 5-year marriage. When I finally tore it open, expecting divorce papers, I instead found something that made my blood run cold. The letterhead read, Morrison, Klein & Associates, Private Investigation Services. Dear Mr. Harrison, pursuant to your wife's request to investigate suspected insurance fraud related to your recent cancer treatment, we have completed our investigation. Please find enclosed our final report and photographic evidence. Our findings indicate no evidence of fraud or misrepresentation regarding your medical condition. Your cancer diagnosis, treatment, and remission are fully documented and legitimate. However, during the course of our investigation, we discovered information that Mrs. Harrison specifically requested we include in our report. We have documented evidence of Mrs. Harrison's relationship with Mr. David Chen, which began approximately 8 months ago during the most intensive phase of your treatment. This relationship appears to be ongoing and serious in nature. Enclosed, you will find photographs, phone records, and other documentation as requested. Our invoice has been forwarded to Mrs. Harrison as agreed. Sincerely, James Morrison, Private Investigator. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the letter. The words swam before my eyes as I tried to process what I was reading. Sarah hadn't just left me. She had been investigating me, looking for a way to prove I was faking cancer. And while doing so, she had been cheating on me. The photographs scattered across the table as I opened the envelope fully. Sarah laughing at a restaurant with a man I recognized as David Chen from her marketing firm. Sarah holding hands with him outside a downtown hotel. Sarah kissing him in the parking lot of the hospital where I had been receiving chemotherapy. The hospital parking lot. While I was inside, pumped full of poison, fighting for my life, she was outside kissing another man. The phone record showed hundreds of text messages and calls between them, dating back to February, right in the middle of my most aggressive treatment phase, when I was at my weakest, when I needed her most. I ran to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left. When I finally stopped dry heaving, I sat on the cold tile floor of our bathroom and tried to understand the level of betrayal I was looking at. She hadn't just fallen out of love with me. She had been actively building a case against me, trying to prove I was lying about having cancer while simultaneously carrying on an affair. The cruelty was so comprehensive, so calculated, that it took my breath away. My phone rang, startling me back to reality. It was Jake. "Michael, I've been thinking about what happened with Sarah and something doesn't add up. The timing is too convenient and—" "Jake," I interrupted, my voice hoarse. "You need to come over. Now. I found something." 20 minutes later, Jake was sitting at my kitchen table, staring at the photographs and documents spread before us like evidence from a crime scene. "Jesus Christ, Michael, she hired a private investigator to prove you were faking cancer while cheating on me with her co-worker." I pointed to the timestamps on the photos. "Look at the dates, Jake. This one was taken the same day I had that reaction to the chemo and spent the night in the ER. While I was having an allergic reaction that nearly killed me, she was having dinner with David Chen." Jake's face had gone red with anger. "This is beyond betrayal, man. This is sociopathic. Who does something like this?" I picked up one particular photo, Sarah and David at what looked like a couple's retreat in Aspen. The date stamp showed it was from last month, when Sarah had told me she was visiting her college roommate in California. "She's been planning this for months, Jake. Maybe longer. The divorce isn't because I changed after cancer. It's because she found someone else and needed an exit strategy. But why investigate you? Why try to prove you were lying about being sick?" I thought about it. Pieces of a horrible puzzle clicking into place. Insurance money, life insurance, disability insurance, medical costs. If she could prove I was defrauding the insurance companies, she could divorce me without looking like the villain. She could tell everyone I was a liar who faked cancer for money and sympathy. Jake was quiet for a long moment, studying the private investigator's report. "But the investigation cleared you completely. It says right here that your cancer was real, your treatment was legitimate, everything was documented properly. Which means she has no ammunition against me, no way to make me the bad guy." A bitter laugh escaped me. "So she just went with the direct approach. Told me I'm a different person now, that she can't live with someone defined by illness. Michael, you have to expose this. You can't let her get away with this level of betrayal. People need to know what kind of person she really is." I stared at the photographs of my wife with another man, taken while I was fighting for my life. The anger was building inside me, but so was something else, a clarity I hadn't felt in months. "No, Jake, I'm not going to destroy her publicly. As much as she deserves it, that's not who I am. But I am going to make sure she doesn't get to control the narrative of our divorce." I gathered up the photographs and documents, straightening them into a neat pile. She thinks she's been so clever, so careful, but she made one crucial mistake. "What's that?" She forgot to tell the private investigator not to send me a copy of the report. As evening fell over Denver, I sat alone in my house, finally understanding the full scope of what had been done to me. The betrayal was complete, emotional, physical, and financial. But for the first time since Sarah had walked out, I felt something other than despair. I felt like fighting back. Tomorrow, I would call my own lawyer. Not to seek revenge, but to protect myself from whatever other schemes Sarah might have planned. Because if she was capable of this level of deception, there was no telling what else she might try. The cancer had tried to kill me, and I had beaten it. Now I was facing a different kind of disease, the rot that had been eating away at my marriage while I was fighting for my life. But just like with cancer, I wasn't going down without a fight. The law office of Patricia Williams was nothing like the sterile medical facilities I'd grown accustomed to over the past year and a half. Warm wood paneling, leather-bound books, and the faint scent of coffee created an atmosphere that felt more like a study than a battleground. But as I sat across from Patricia's desk, clutching the private investigator's report, I knew this would be every bit as much a fight for survival as my battle with cancer had been. "Mr. Harrison," Patricia said, reviewing the documents I'd brought her. "In 23 years of family law, I've never seen anything quite like this. Your wife didn't just commit adultery. She orchestrated a comprehensive investigation to discredit you while you were undergoing cancer treatment." I watched as she examined the photographs of Sarah and David Chen, her expression growing more serious with each image. "The question is, what do you want to do with this information?" "I want to protect myself. If Sarah was capable of this level of deception, I need to know what else she might be planning." Patricia leaned back in her chair, her gray eyes sharp and calculating. "Based on these documents, I'd say she was building a case for divorce that would paint you as the villain. If she could prove insurance fraud, she could claim the entire marriage was based on deception. She'd be the victim of a manipulative husband who faked cancer for money and sympathy. But the investigation cleared me completely. Exactly. Which means she's lost her primary strategy and had to pivot to the "you've changed" argument. It's weaker legally, but it allows her to maintain some moral high ground publicly. Patricia spread the photos across her desk like a poker hand. However, these images tell a very different story. Adultery during a spouse's serious illness isn't just morally reprehensible, it has legal implications for asset division and alimony. Over the next hour, Patricia outlined my options. Colorado was a no-fault divorce state, but adultery could still impact financial settlements, especially when combined with the circumstances of my illness and Sarah's deception. "I want you to prepare a comprehensive response," I told her. "But I don't want to destroy her publicly. I just want to protect myself and make sure she doesn't get to rewrite history." As I left Patricia's office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Michael, this is David Chen. We need to talk. Can you meet me at Confluence Park at 6 p.m. The audacity took my breath away. Sarah's lover wanted to meet with me face to face. Confluence Park sat at the junction of Cherry Creek and the South Platte River, a place where Sarah and I had often walked during better times. The irony of meeting David there wasn't lost on me as I found him sitting on a bench overlooking the water, his expensive suit looking out of place among the joggers and dog walkers. David Chen was everything I wasn't. Tall, perfectly groomed, and radiating the kind of confidence that came from never having faced real adversity. As I approached, he stood and extended his hand as if we were meeting for a business lunch. "Michael, thank you for coming." I ignored his outstretched hand. "What do you want, David?" He sat back down, and after a moment's hesitation, I joined him on the bench, maintaining as much distance as possible. "I want to apologize," he said, staring out at the water. "What happened between Sarah and me? It wasn't planned. It just developed over time." 8 months, I said flatly. According to the private investigator's report, It's been going on for 8 months. That's not something that just developed. That's a relationship. David's composed facade cracked slightly. You know about the investigation? I know about everything, David. I know about the restaurants, the hotels, the couples retreat in Aspen while I was having chemotherapy. I know about the hundreds of texts and phone calls. So don't insult my intelligence by calling it an accident. He was quiet for a long moment, watching a group of kayakers navigate the rapids below us. Sarah told me you were different after the cancer, that you'd become distant and depressed. She said the marriage was already over. Is that what helped you sleep at night, telling yourself you were rescuing her from an unhappy marriage? I genuinely care about Sarah, Michael. I love her. The word love coming from his mouth, referring to my wife, hit me like a physical blow. But instead of anger, I felt something unexpected. Pity. David, let me tell you something about the woman you love. While I was fighting for my life, she hired a private investigator to try to prove I was faking cancer. She was looking for a way to divorce me that would make me the villain and her the victim. She was willing to destroy my reputation and potentially send me to prison for insurance fraud. Also, she could be with you without looking like the bad guy. David's face had gone pale. That's not. Sarah wouldn't. I pulled out my phone and showed him photos from the investigator's report. Not the ones of him and Sarah together, but the cover letter and summary. She paid a private investigator to try to prove her dying husband was a liar and a fraud. Is that the woman you love? He stared at the phone screen for a long time, his hands trembling slightly. I didn't know about any investigation. Sarah never mentioned. Of course she didn't, because it would have revealed what kind of person she really is. The kind of person who can kiss her lover in a hospital parking lot while her husband is inside receiving chemotherapy. David stood abruptly, pacing to the edge of the path. I thought I knew her. I thought she was trapped in an unhappy marriage with someone who had become bitter and withdrawn. I was fighting cancer, David. I was trying not to die. If that made me less fun to be around, I apologize for the inconvenience. When he turned back to me, there were tears in his eyes. What kind of person does that? What kind of person tries to destroy someone who's already fighting for their life? For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something other than anger or betrayal. I felt sorry for David Chen, who had fallen in love with a carefully constructed facade and was now seeing the reality underneath. I don't know, I said quietly. But I know she's not the woman either. Of us thought she was. David sat back down, his head in his hands. Michael, I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. If I had known, if I had any idea what she was really doing, what would you have done differently? He looked up at me, his face etched with genuine anguish. I would have ended it immediately. I would have told her to get help. I would have... God, I don't... No. But I wouldn't have been part of destroying someone who was already going through hell. We sat in silence for several minutes. Two men who had both been deceived by the same woman, watching the water flow beneath the bridge toward downtown Denver. What happens now? David asked finally. Now you decide what kind of man you want to be going forward, and I decide how much of my life I'm going to let Sarah's betrayal define. As I walked back to my car, leaving David sitting alone by the water, I realized something had shifted inside me. The anger was still there, but it was no longer consuming me. I had survived cancer, and I would survive this too. But unlike the cancer, which had been random and senseless, this betrayal had been a choice. Sarah had chosen to deceive me, to investigate me, to carry on an affair while I fought for my life. Now I had to choose how to respond. And for the first time since I'd opened that investigator's report, I knew exactly what I was going to do. 6 weeks after the confrontation, At Confluence Park, I stood in my lawyer's office, signing the final divorce papers. Patricia Williams had negotiated a settlement that protected my assets and ensured Sarah received no alimony. A direct result of the evidence we'd presented regarding her affair and the private investigation. Sarah's lawyer had been eager to settle quickly and quietly once they realized what we knew. "How do you feel?" Patricia asked as I handed back the signed documents. "Free," I said, and meant it. The word would have surprised me 2 months ago when I thought freedom meant being cancer-free. Now I understood it meant something much deeper, being free from deception, from manipulation, from having to wonder if the person sleeping next to me actually wanted me to survive. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Divorce final today, right? Drinks to celebrate your actual Independence Day?" I smiled and typed back, "Can't tonight. I have a date." It was true. 3 weeks earlier, during a follow-up appointment with Dr. Martinez, my oncologist, I had struck up a conversation with a woman in the waiting room. Lisa was there supporting her father through his own cancer treatment, and we had bonded over the strange mix of hope and terror that came with loving someone fighting the disease. "A date?" Dr. Martinez had said when I mentioned it during my appointment. "Michael, that's wonderful. You deserve happiness after everything you've been through." "I'm nervous," I'd admitted. "It's been 5 years since I dated anyone other than Sarah. And what if Lisa sees me differently because of the cancer history?" Dr. Martinez had leaned back in his chair, the same one where he'd delivered both devastating news and miraculous hope over the past 18 months. "Michael, your cancer is part of your story, but it's not the whole story. Anyone worth your time will understand that surviving cancer doesn't make you damaged. It makes you strong." Now, as I drove to meet Lisa at a small Italian restaurant in the Highlands neighborhood, I reflected on how much had changed. The Denver skyline looked the same, the Rocky Mountains still provided their majestic backdrop, but I was seeing everything through different eyes. Lisa was already seated when I arrived, reading a book and sipping wine. She looked up as I approached, her smile genuine and warm. So different from the calculated expressions I'd grown accustomed to seeing from Sarah in those final months. "How did the lawyer meeting go?" she asked as I sat down. I appreciated that she asked directly rather than dancing around the subject. "It's done. Officially divorced as of this afternoon. How do you feel about that?" "Relieved mostly, ready to move forward." Over dinner, we talked about everything. Her work as a nurse practitioner, my return to architecture, her father's improving prognosis, my plans to travel once I felt fully recovered. The conversation flowed naturally, without the careful navigation around sensitive topics that had characterized my last year with Sarah. "Can I ask you something?" Lisa said as we shared dessert. "Are you worried about dating again after what you went through with your ex-wife?" I considered the question carefully. "I'm cautious, yes, but I'm not going to let Sarah's betrayal make me cynical about love in general. That would be letting her win twice. First by destroying our marriage, then by destroying my ability to trust again." That's a healthy perspective. It must have been incredibly difficult to find out about the affair while you were dealing with recovery. "The affair was actually the least shocking part," I said, surprising myself with the admission. Finding out she'd hired a private investigator to try to prove I was faking cancer, that was what really broke me. It wasn't just that she fell out of love with me, it was that she actively tried to destroy me. Lisa reached across the table and touched my hand. "I'm sorry you went through that. No one deserves that level of betrayal, especially not while fighting for their life." The simple gesture, her hand on mine, offering comfort without judgment, made me realize how much I had missed genuine human connection. As we walked to our cars after dinner, Lisa asked, "Would you like to go hiking this weekend? There's a trail in Golden that's not too strenuous, perfect for someone still building back their strength." "I'd love that," I said, and meant it. Driving home through the familiar streets of Denver, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. 18 months ago, I had been a man defined by his ambitions and plans, someone who thought he had his life mapped out perfectly. Cancer had stripped all of that away, reduced me to the most basic question: would I survive? But surviving wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. The man Sarah had married might have been driven by external validation and material success. The man I had become through fighting cancer understood what really mattered: authentic relationships, genuine purpose, and the courage to be vulnerable with people who deserved that trust. When I arrived home, I found a letter in my mailbox that made me smile. It was from David Chen. "Michael, I wanted you to know that I ended my relationship with Sarah the day after we talked at the park. I couldn't be with someone capable of what she did to you. I've also started seeing a therapist to understand how I allowed myself to become involved in such a situation. I know my apology can't undo the pain I helped cause, but I want you to know that meeting you changed my perspective on what kind of man I want to be. Your grace in the face of such betrayal was humbling. I hope you find the happiness you deserve. David." I folded the letter and put it away. David's apology was appreciated, but more importantly, it confirmed something I had suspected. Exposure to the truth had consequences for everyone involved. Sarah might have gotten her divorce, but she had lost the respect of the man she'd been planning a future with. As I prepared for bed in the house that was now truly mine, I looked at the framed photo on my nightstand. Not of Sarah, which I'd removed weeks ago, but a picture Jake had taken of me ringing the bell at the cancer center after my final chemotherapy treatment. In the photo, I'm thin and bald, but smiling with genuine joy and relief. That man in the photo had survived not just cancer, but betrayal, deception, and the complete destruction of the life he'd thought he was building. He had emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable of genuine love than he'd ever been before. Tomorrow, I would wake up as a cancer survivor, a divorced man, and someone ready to build a new life based on authentic connections rather than comfortable lies. It wasn't the story I'd planned to write, but it was the story I'd lived through, and it was mine. The letter from the private investigator that had revealed Sarah's betrayal now sat in a file folder in my home office, along with all the other documents from the divorce proceedings. I kept them not as reminders of pain, but as evidence of survival. Proof that I had faced the worst that life could throw at me, disease and betrayal, and emerged not just intact, but stronger. As I turned off the lights and settled into sleep, I thought about Lisa's smile, about the hiking trip we'd planned, about the possibility of love without deception. For the first time in months, I fell asleep not thinking about what I'd lost, but about what I might find. The story that had begun with cancer and betrayal was ending with hope and the promise of new beginnings. And that, I realized, was the best possible ending I could have written.